Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Rob here. Welcome to the Flame Entertainment and Sports. Hope everyone's doing good out there. Make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Flame_ES. On this week's episode, we're going to be recapping the NFL draft as we spent the past 2 weeks, previewing the draft. We talked about a total of 31 different prospects, and on today's episode, I'm going to be going one by one, and I'm going to be telling you all where each prospect we covered got drafted, what round they got drafted in, and how I think they fit into the team that drafted them. And we have guys who ended up being, undrafted free agents or undrafted rookies, so we'll talk about them as well. And yeah, guys, with all that said, let's get into it. Starting off with the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft, Cam Ward. All right, guys, so now to start off, as we go one by one with the 31 prospects we covered, going to start off with the number one overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft, Cam Ward. Of course, as expected, he's drafted number one by the Tennessee Titans. I think, in terms of where he was drafted, I think it's an A-plus pick by the Titans. I think Cam Ward is exactly what they've been looking for many, many years now. I think he's going to be able to fill in, and step into that role of being the franchise quarterback in Nashville. And as for the fit, I think it's an A-plus as well. I think Cam fits perfectly into what Tennessee is currently doing these 2 years now with, Brian Callahan as their head coach. And, with this new regime that's been part of the Titans now for, coming into their second season. I think they've had a really good offseason. They've been able to pick up 2 veteran offensive linemen, which was a position, that they're very much in need of improving, as their offensive line last year was one of the worst in football. And they've also been aggressive now, adding more weapons, to complement their new rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. They already had 2 running backs, last season, Jahdae Spears, who they drafted a couple of years ago out of LSU, and Tony Pollard, who they signed last offseason from the Dallas Cowboys. Those are 2 great young running backs to have. And now in the receiving room, they did have Calvin Ridley, who they brought in last year, a really good, veteran receiver to have. Now they ended up drafting multiple receivers. They signed one as an undrafted rookie, and we'll get into him later, in Xavier Restrepo, reuniting him with Cam Ward. And then, they also recently signed Tyler Lockett, the longtime Seattle Seahawks, veteran leader, great slot receiver throughout his whole career in Seattle. So I really think what Tennessee's done, I think they're building perfectly around Cam Ward. Now to move on to our next, prospect that we covered, and that is Travis Hunter, the corner/wideout out of Colorado. He ends up being the second pick as expected, but not to the team that most people thought he would be picked by, the Cleveland Browns. They end up trading out of this pick and swapping with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars move up. They trade, multiple picks, including next year's first-round pick and second-round pick, to move up to the number 2 overall spot in the draft to select Travis Hunter. First of all, I think this is an A-plus pick by the Jaguars. I think James Gladstone, the new GM over there, 33 years old, youngest GM in the league, he makes a splash, his first ever draft. He goes up and trades for one of the best prospects that's come out of college in a very long time, and Travis Hunter. And then, the fit in terms of Hunter, going to the Jaguars, I think it's an A-plus fit as well. I think Travis Hunter is one of those rare prospects where he pretty much would have fit within any team that was going to select him. So I think that's a tremendous move for Jacksonville overall to trade up. I know they did give up a lot of future assets, but I do think Travis Hunter is going to be worth it. I think he's, like I said, one of the most special prospects that come out of college football and into the NFL in a very long time. This guy was elite on the defense side of the ball and offensive side of the ball in college, and that's something we haven't really seen in a very long time. At least in my lifetime, I had never seen that until Travis Hunter. And now to move on to our next prospect, the 3rd overall pick in the draft, Abdul. He goes 3rd overall, as many expected, to the New York Giants. I think this is an A-plus pick by the Giants, picking up, one of the best pass rushers to come out of college in recent memory. And not only is the pick an A-plus from the Giants, but I think the fit as well. Abdul, the Giants, is an A-plus fit as well, because not only are they getting an elite pass rusher, not only is Abdul, stepping into a team that needs pass rushing help, he's going to be playing alongside veterans who have done this now for a couple years. And Brian Burns, one of the best pass rushers in all of football, who the Giants got last offseason from the Carolina Panthers. And then a guy they drafted a couple years ago with a first-round pick out of Oregon, Kayvon Thibodeau, he's there as well. And then you look in the interior, and they have one of the best defensive tackles in all of football out of Clemson, 5 years ago, I believe, or 6 years ago maybe already, and Dexter Lawrence. So yeah, you look at what the Giants already had with Burns, Lawrence, and Thibodeau, and now you add in Abdul Carter, and I think it was an amazing draft pick overall by the New York Giants to select Abdul Carter with that third pick overall. Now to move on to our next prospect, Will Campbell. As expected, he was picked 4th overall by the New England Patriots, the left tackle out of LSU. Of course, one of the dire needs for the Patriots was left tackle, and they feel that Will Campbell is going to be able to step into that role and hopefully for them protect Drake May for a very long time. Overall, I grade the pick overall an A. For those of you that didn't watch any of our preview episodes where I broke down all these prospects I'm going to talk about today, Will Campbell, I feel like he's an amazing prospect, but I have him as a long-term solution as an all-pro guard. I don't see him being a long-term left tackle, so that's why I give the pick an A. And as for the fit in New England, I think it's A+, because from everything I'm hearing, it seems like Mike Vrabel and Will Campbell have hit it off from day one, and they really believe that Will Campbell could be that guy to protect Drake May, for 10+ years going forward. Now to move on to our next guy, Mason Graham, as expected, right? He was the 5th pick overall, but not to the team that was expected to pick him. And that goes back to the Jaguars trading into number 2 and the Browns swapping picks with them and landing at number 5. So the Browns select Mason Graham with the 5th pick overall. Overall, I give the draft pick grade overall. In terms of the Browns getting Graham at number 5, I give it a D overall. Those of you that, some might be shocked by that, but those of you who listened to the episode where I talked about my thoughts on Graham, you won't be shocked by that, but I understand many of you may be shocked right now. So if you want, just go back. We covered him, I believe it was either the last episode or the episode before. But yeah, so Mason Graham overall, I had him as around like a 3rd round prospect. Ultimately, he goes top 5. It's nothing against Mason Graham. There was just nothing on his tape that really stood out to me that screamed, it was worth taking a 1st round pick on this guy. Overall, though, from the fit perspective, I do give it a B. I do think it's a good fit, Graham in Cleveland, because you think of that defense that they already have, and specifically them having Myles Garrett on the outside. I feel like that's really going to help Mason Graham on the interior, and perhaps he could thrive quicker in Cleveland than he would in another situation. Now to move on to the next guy, Ashton Jeanty. He gets picked 6th overall, running back out of Boise State, one of my favorite prospects of all time. I think this guy's going to be the real deal, and this is an A+ pick by the Las Vegas Raiders to get their running back of now and of the future. I think he's going to fit perfectly into what Pete Carroll loves to do. Pete Carroll loves to ground and pound that ball. Obviously, we know him from his time in Seattle, but they're able to do with Marshawn Lynch and that offense there with the Seahawks, and now he gets his hands on Ashton Jeanty. And overall, in terms of the fit, I think it's an A+. I talked about it, I believe it was 2 episodes ago where I covered Jeanty, and I said that this guy has the ability to be a franchise changer, and more specifically, I mentioned on that episode that if the Raiders were to draft him, as they did, as I'm talking about now, I feel he could be that guy to bring back that nasty, that nastiness that the Raiders were known for, right, in the 80s and 90s, right? They're known as this nasty team, and I feel like Jeanty could really be the main player or the main guy on the field to really lead that charge into getting back to that old school Raiders football that everyone used to watch, right? Now we move on to Armand Membou. He's picked 7th overall, the offensive lineman, right tackle out of Missouri. The Jets pick him at 7. I really love Armand Membou when I watch his tape, but I do not see him being a long-term solution at right tackle. Just like Will Campbell, I have Armand Membou being an all-pro offensive guard for many years to come. So the Jets do pick him as the right tackle. I give the pick an A+ though, because I am super high on Membou. And then in terms of the fit, I think it's an A+ as well, because it was a glaring need. Right tackle specifically, and offensive line in general. The Jets really had a lot of holes to fill, and I think getting Membou in as the first pick for this new regime, I think it's a great start for the Jets. Now we move on to Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas. He goes 9th overall to the New Orleans Saints. I give it an A+. I'm super high on Kelvin Banks, but he's another guy, that they drafted him as a tackle. And for some reason, I also see Kelvin Banks being a long-term solution as an all-pro caliber offensive guard. So that's the tricky thing with a lot of these offensive linemen I studied here for this draft. The majority of them are tackles in college, but I see a lot of them being long-term solutions at guard in the NFL. And I see that for Kelvin Banks, but I am super high on him, so I give this an A+ in terms of the Saints getting him at number 9 overall. And I think it's an A+ fit because the Saints have a lot of holes on that offensive line. And I think this is a great building block for Kellen Moore New head coach, and Mickey Loomis, who's been the GM there for several years now. But I love the pick here for the New Orleans Saints. Then we move on. The pause from the guys we covered. At 13th overall, the Miami Dolphins selected Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. I want to give my quick thoughts on that. I studied his film later after the first round ended. So late Thursday night, I was studying his tape. I'm super excited to have Kenneth Grant join this defensive line. And specifically, I can't wait to see him play next to our all-pro defensive tackle and Zach Sealer. What stands out to me on tape about Kenneth Grant, so first of all, this guy is 6'4", around 340 pounds. He runs like a receiver, a running back. This guy is super athletic. He's elite in run defense, but he's also elite in putting pressure on the quarterback. He's one of these big nose tackles, like think of throwback players such as Vince Wilfork, Paul Soliai, those type of guys, right? This is what Kenneth Grant's going to provide for the Dolphins. So he's kind of a jack of all trades. And what I love especially is that this guy is a pile pusher, right? I guess you could call it or he pushes, he gives extra pressure towards the quarterback, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through sacks, right? Because this guy is able to push offensive linemen directly into the quarterback. So I just feel like this is a hell of a pick for the Dolphins. Obviously, it was a major need, being also specifically, us losing Calais Campbel, but it goes beyond that, because even if we did keep Calais Campbell, it would have been for one more year. So drafting and investing your first round pick in a guy like Kenneth Grant, the hope here is that you have a guy here that for the next decade or so is gonna really lead that interior, right, of your defensive line. And the best thing about it, he doesn't have to be that number one guy from day one, because you have Zach Sealer, and I think Zach Sealer is gonna also really help Kenneth Grant get good quicker, because he's that veteran leader and he's the ultimate example of what you want in any player, right, on and off the field. So now to get back into the guys that we covered on here on the podcast. Pick number 14th overall, Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State. One of my favorite tight end prospects that I've seen in a very long time. He gets drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. I think this is an A-plus pick. Many people had Tyler Warren going anywhere between pick 6 to pick 10, basically. And the fact that he lasted all the way to 14th was shocking to me. But Indianapolis, so in terms of the fit, I think it's an A-plus as well. They have a glaring need for tight end. It's just the only thing that's kind of tricky over there is that, they still don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They have a lot of questions, really. But overall, I think Tyler Warren's going to be one of those guys that comes into the league, even as a rookie. He's going to look like a veteran. He's going to have some flashes of like what Brock Bowers did this past season, what Sam Laporta did the season before. I just think Tyler Warren's one of those rookies that's going to look like a vet from day one. Then to move on to the next guy, pick 17th overall, Shemar Stewart, the pass rusher out of Texas A&M and out of Pace, my high school. Talked about him on our last episode last week. I'm super happy for him. Congrats to Shemar. He gets drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this is an A-plus pick for the Bengals. Obviously, we all know they have enough offense. They just need to really focus mainly on defense, in my opinion. And I think Shemar is going to fit in greatly. He has an extra chip on his shoulder. A lot of people doubted him because he didn't have those sack numbers. He lasts all the way to 17. But I think he's going to provide a huge spark for that Bengals defense going forward. Now we move on. Picked right after Shemar was Zabel, picked 18th overall. The offensive guard out of North Dakota State. I was super high on this guy. To me, he's a top 10 talent. I think he's going to be an all-pro center in a couple years. Probably the first couple years he'll start off as a guard for Seattle. I think it's a perfect fit as well. So I think overall for Seattle, drafting him at this position, A+, and in terms of how he fits into their team, it's an A+ as well. And we move on to the next guy we covered, Jahdae Barron. He gets picked 20th overall by the Denver Broncos, a corner out of Texas. I wasn't super high on this guy. I had around a late second, the early third round grade on him. So I'm not super high on him because what he excels in the best is zone coverage. I'm more of the man guy. So in terms of the pick overall, I give it a B. But with that said, the fit is an A+ because on the other side, he has Patrick Surtain. So I feel like what they're missing is what Barron is going to be able to provide. So overall, I think Sean Payton and the Broncos did a hell of a job picking Barron here because I think they focus mainly on fit. And like I said, I have it as an A+ fit. Now to take a quick little break here. The following pick at 21, we had the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Derrick Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. I just wanted to take a minute here to, send our best to Derrick Harmon and his family. Unfortunately, the day after the draft, his mother passed away. So, I want everyone, to pray for Derrick Harmon and his family at this difficult time. And, obviously it's tough because, his dreams, accomplished there, by being drafted. then unfortunately he loses his mother the following day. So, we want to send all our best to Derrick, Harmon, his loved ones, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, at this time. Now to get back into our prospects here that we covered. Picked 25th overall, Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. He gets picked by the New York Giants. So the Giants do end up picking a quarterback. No, it wasn't Shedeur Sanders. It was Jackson Dart, the QB out of Ole Miss. Overall, I give this a B+ grade. I had Dart more as I had him, as a second round guy. I would have picked him. But it's not only like where the Giants picked him, but I'm higher on Shedeur Sanders than I am on Jackson Dart. So that's why I gave it a B+ grade, because I feel if they would have drafted Shedeur in the first round, I probably would have given them an A+. But with that said, I do feel the fit is an A, because Brian Daboll does have a good track record of working with quarterbacks. Obviously, Josh Allen is the ultimate example. And I feel like Brian Daboll, he's just one of those coaches that really likes to work with quarterbacks. And something in Jackson Dart's game had to catch his eye. And another reason I like the fit here with the Giants is because they did sign 2 veteran quarterbacks this offseason, and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. So I feel like they're going to give Jackson Dart the time to grow rather than rushing him in. Now to move on, we have Malaki Starks, picked 27th overall, the safety out of Georgia, picked by the Ravens. I was super high on this guy. I know he was a reported option for the Dolphins. I wouldn't have minded if they would have picked him at 13th, although I am happy with Kenneth, of course. But yeah, the fact that he fell to 27th, I think this is a huge steal. It's definitely an A+ by the Ravens. And in terms of the fit, it's an A+ as well. I think there's no other team that I don't think there's a more perfect fit basically for Malaki Starks. When you think of the Ravens and their history, they always have incredible guys on that defense, and then you think of who they already have on the safety room, and Kyle Hamilton, arguably the best safety in the league, and now you add in Malaki Starks, who's arguably the best safety in this 2025 NFL draft class. The Ravens just got scarier. Obviously, their defense last year wasn't as elite as they've been, right, in the Harbaugh era. But I think adding a guy like Malaki Starks is really going to provide an extra boost. And man, I think the rest of the league should be scared of this pick. Then to move on to the next pick, final pick of the first round, 32nd overall, the Kansas City Chiefs select Josh Simmons, the offensive lineman out of Ohio State. So I covered this guy. I do see the talent. I see the first round talent, definitely. I just felt he was very raw. So I give it a B overall. But with that said, from a fit perspective, it's definitely an A+, because Kansas City's just shown that whoever they draft, they're going to know how to develop, and they're going to know how to put them in the right position. And also, obviously, offensive line was a glaring need, right, for the Chiefs. So I think overall, the fit, Simmons to the Chiefs is a hell of a fit. I give it an A+, like I said. Now we move on to the second round of the draft. With the 4th pick of the second round, 36 overall of the whole draft, Quinshon Judkins, one of my favorite running backs in this class out of Ohio State. He gets picked by the Cleveland Browns. I give it an A+ grade because I had Judkins as a first-round talent. And then in terms of the fit, I gave it an A+ as well, because obviously there's going to be a glaring opportunity, right, opened up for Judkins and Cleveland to even possibly be the number 1 running back by day 1 with Nick Chubb not being re-signed. And yeah, I'm super high on Judkins. I'm not going super into detail, guys, on these guys individually, because I already did cover them on the previous episodes. So I don't want to really repeat myself. So for those of you who haven't watched or listened to those past 2 episodes where I previewed all these prospects, make sure to go back and check it out so you can hear a more detailed opinion on how I feel about each of these guys. Now to move on, Tyler Shough, he was picked 40th overall, 8th pick in the second round by the New Orleans Saints, a quarterback out of Louisville. Arguably the most, one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks, I would say, alongside Cam Ward. This guy, unfortunately, he just has a big injury history in college. He had 3 or 4 season-ending injuries, but ultimately in his final year, he transfers to Louisville. He plays in double-digit games for the first time. He had, I believe it was something like a 25-6 TD to interception ratio. He had an amazing season, and he looks like a pro quarterback. He's also 25 years old, so he's an older rookie. Overall, I give it an A for the Saints, and the reason why I give it an A and not an A+, because I feel if they would have gotten Shedeur Sanders, they would have been getting a better prospect. With that said, though, I do think it's an A+ in terms of fit. I think Kellen Moore, obviously, he's a quarterback guy. He played quarterback. He's been coaching, as an offensive coordinator, and he has a lot of experience with different types of quarterbacks. When you think of his time in, with the Chargers, right? Helping out with Herbert, all his years in Dallas, helping out with Dak Prescott, and then, most recently helping out with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia this past season as their offensive coordinator. I think something definitely stood out about Tyler Shough, and I'm super excited because I feel like Kellen Moore is one of the best offensive minds in general in football, but also one of the best quarterback gurus. I think he is a certified QB guru, so I cannot wait to see And I am expecting Tyler Shough to start week 1 of the NFL season. Now we move on to TJ Sanders, man. What a beast. The defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Fortunately, as a Dolphin fan, he might be terrorizing our Dolphins. You know, he gets drafted by the Buffalo Bills. Amazing A-plus pick there by the Bills to pick him 41st overall. You know, it's an A-plus fit as well. I mean, you think of the Bills and how great they did last season, and you forget how depleted, man, they were on that defense, man, the whole season. So many injuries. And, you know, so I feel like it was smart of them to go and get this big man, put him there in the middle of that defensive line to help out. I think he's going to provide an amazing boost and spark to that Bills defense. And I think TJ Sanders is going to have an all-pro career going forward. Then we move on. Following Sanders at 41, we had Mason Taylor picked at 42, the tight end out of LSU. And unfortunately as well, man, he might be balling out against our Dolphins as he was picked by the New York Jets, man. So two of the Dolphin division rivals, man, picked two of my favorite players. But hey, at the end of the day, I just got to give these teams their credit because they obviously know what they're doing. In terms of the pick overall, A+, definitely. I mean, for him to fall to 42, I have Mason Taylor as definitely a first-round talent. And then in terms of the fit, I think it's an A+ as well for the Jets because they need as many weapons as possible in that offense right now. And I think Mason Taylor is going to provide a lot of help in his rookie season, the newly signed quarterback Justin Fields, and he's also going to help open up the field for, you know, all-pro caliber receiver and Garrett Wilson that they have there with the Jets. Then we move on, another one of my guys. So 3 guys in a row. 41st pick, TJ Sanders. 42nd, Mason Taylor. And now 43rd overall, Alfred Collins, a big, badass defensive tackle out of Texas, getting picked by the San Francisco 49ers. And I mean, definitely an A+ pick. I had Alfred Collins as a first-round talent. They get him here at 43 with the 11th pick in the second round. And then the fit, I mean, come on. How much better could it get for Alfred Collins to join the 49ers as they get back their former defensive coordinator and Robert Saleh, one of the best defensive coaches in all of football. I love Coach Saleh. I think he does an amazing job on the defensive side of the ball. And now he's going to have Alfred Collins to work with. I can't wait to see what he comes up with and what plans he has for Alfred Collins going forward in San Fran. Now we move on to the 47th pick overall, 15th in the second round. Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals overall. I wasn't super high on Will Johnson. A lot of people had him going first round, but he does have an injury history. He has multiple times where he's gotten hurt on his knee, and now he's coming off of a toe injury that he suffered in October, the end of his season. Overall, I give the pick a B because I did have him as a B in terms of talent, but fit overall, I give it a C. I feel like the Cardinals could have gone maybe offensive line here, maybe some sort of offensive guard or offensive tackle, and then later in the draft pick up some of my, you know, sleeper guys like a Jalen Smith or a Kobe Bryant, right? So yeah, guys, with that said, I'm going to move on now to the next guy. We have Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. He gets picked 92nd overall, 28th pick in the third round by the Seattle Seahawks. I give the pick overall a B because it goes back to my point where when I talked about Dart and Shough. I just feel like Shedeur Sanders is a notch above these guys. So I feel if Seattle would have gone with Shedeur, I would have given them an A+, but I give them a B. In terms of the fit, I do like it a lot. I give it an A- fit. Obviously, Seattle just signed Sam Darnold, right, to a $100 million contract, but I feel it was smart of them because ultimately, why not take a chance on a guy who could potentially be a franchise quarterback? And I think it's smart as well because they really don't know. Who knows? Maybe Sam Darnold is a franchise guy, but if it doesn't work out, hey, after a year or two, they could kind of maybe cut ties with him. And Jalen Milroe, hopefully for them, is developing in the system. And, you know, we'll see what happens. Now we move on. One of my favorite picks in the draft. Picked 97th overall in the third round by the Houston Texans, Jalen Smith, the quarterback out of USC. One of the guys I referred to when talking about, you know, the Cardinals drafting Will Johnson. This is a guy that gets in your face. He's not afraid to bump you. He's a man-to-man corner, and that's my style of corner. So I think this is an A+ pick to get this guy in the third round. I have him as a first-round talent or second-round talent. But actually, I have him as a first-round talent. But I understood people not wanting him in the first round due to his size. In terms of the fit overall, I give him an A+ as well. You already think of the young defenders Houston has on that defense, including Darius Stingley, who's arguably the best corner in football. Now you add in Jalen Smith alongside him, who in my opinion is one of the best corners coming out of this class. I think this is an absolute home run pick by Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, and whoever else wanted Jalen Smith to join the Houston Texans. Then we move on. Another one of my favorite guys, man. I love this guy. Charles Grant, the big left tackle out of William and Mary. He gets picked 99th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders, man. So shout out to the Raiders. They pick up two of my favorite guys, man. Two guys I had as top 10 picks in this draft, top 10 talent at least. And Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State, who we talked about already. And now, Charles Grant, the big left tackle, man. I love this guy. Out of William and Mary, I think Pete Carroll's going to fall in love with this guy. He's going to be the perfect anchor there to lead this new era, right? Raiders football at the left tackle position or even left guard, wherever they want to use him. I trust in Pete Carroll. He's a hell of a coach. Obviously, he's done a lot of great things within his career in both college and the NFL, and I cannot wait to see this new duo on offense for the Raiders, man. And Charles Grant, blocking and leading the way on that line, and then Ashton Jeanty, man, leading the way on the backfield. I cannot wait. I'm super pumped up and, excited for Raider Nation, man. It's going to be amazing to see. Then we move on to the biggest story. I posted a video about this on Sunday night, I believe. Shedeur Sanders, man, gets picked 144th overall in the 5th round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Arguably one of the greatest or biggest steals of all time. The fact that the Cleveland Browns were able to get Shedeur in the 5th round is absolutely mind-blowing. Overall, I obviously give this an A+ because I am super high on Shedeur. I think he's going to be an all-pro quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's going to be one of those rare elite quarterbacks, coming up down the NFL. And, obviously it has to be an A+ because this guy should have been a top 10 pick minimum, in my opinion. And then you look at the fit, I give it an A+ as well. I know that might sound crazy to people, but I feel like Shedeur is just one of those guys. He's going to make it happen anywhere he goes. Obviously, they have a super crowded quarterback room in Cleveland, with Deshaun Watson, who's hurt. Then they signed Joe Flacco. They trade for Kenny Pickett. They draft Dylan Gabriel. And now they draft Shedeur Sanders. And I just feel like Shedeur, though, he's going to make it happen. He has an extra chip on his shoulder now. This guy, like I said, in my opinion, should have been a top 10 pick. He gets picked 144th overall. Absolutely mind-blowing. Now we move on to our next guy here, Jalen Rivers, offensive lineman out of Miami. He gets picked 153rd overall to the Cincinnati Bengals as an offensive guard, left guard specifically. I think this is an A+ pick by the Bengals. I think minimum Jalen should have gotten in the 3rd round. They got him here at 5th round, so great value. And then in terms of the fit overall, I think Jalen's going to fit in perfectly to Cincinnati. That's the one area I would say on offense that they really need the most help with, to protect Joe Burrow. And, give him time to throw Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki, and all these guys there in Cincinnati. Then we move on to a quarterback in Kyle McCord, pick 181 overall, 6th round pick out of Syracuse. He gets picked by the Philadelphia Eagles. I posted a little clip. I talked about Kyle McCord 2 episodes ago. And one of the teams that came to mind to me for him were Philadelphia because I could see them, getting him and kind of getting him as like a developmental project, being that they obviously have Jalen Hurts already. And look, they end up picking him. I think this is an 8 pick overall because it's tricky. Although I see it obviously as an A+ fit, I feel like Philadelphia maybe could have gotten a guy like a Kobe Bryant, who I was super high on. He ends up going and drafted a corner out of Kansas because as great as their defense is, they lost Darius Slay. So I felt like getting a guy like Kobe Bryant would have been a better pick for now. But Kyle McCord may end up being a better pick for the long-term future. So overall, I give it an A+ in terms of the fit. They're going to give him time. Obviously, they don't need a starting quarterback. They have Jalen Hurts. They're coming off a Super Bowl win. But you never know. 2-3 years down the line, something happens with Hurts. And hey, you have McCord who's been developing here. And even, maybe Hurts misses a game or two. And maybe you throw in McCord out there to see what he could do. Now we move on to our final 4 prospects. They all end up being undrafted free agents. I'll start off first with my guy Kobe Bryant, who I just mentioned a couple times here. The corner out of Kansas. I think this guy is a 1st-round talent. The fact that he didn't get drafted is absolutely mind-blowing to me. Atlanta Falcons give him a chance and sign him. I think this is going to be one of the best undrafted rookies that we've ever seen. I think this guy's going to make an impact from day one. And, being part of a corner room that includes A.J. Terrell, a great veteran, in this league as well. I think that's going to help him. Also, who he's going to be coached by, his head coach is Raheem Morris, one of the best defensive coaches in all of football. I think that's going to be a big help for Kobe Bryant. I feel like Morris and the defensive staff is going to fall in love with Kobe Bryant. I think he's going to be an amazing player for many years, for the Atlanta Falcons. We move on to our next undrafted guy, Trey Weddick, the offensive tackle out of Indiana, and he gets signed by one of the teams I respect the most in the league, the LA Rams. They signed him as an offensive guard. And, it's amazing. He was mainly a tackle, right, in Indiana, but I had him in the NFL as a guard. And look, the Rams signed him as a guard. And just to me, I don't think I gave my grade on Kobe Bryant, but I'm sure you guys could tell. Obviously, A+ signing for the Falcons, A+ fit as well. Now to get back to Weddick really quick, yeah. So first of all, for the Rams to sign this guy undrafted, A+, definitely. I had him going around in terms of talent, maybe fifth or fourth round. So they got him undrafted, and then the fit, I think it's A+ as well. To me, whoever the Rams get their hands on, they're gonna put them in the best possible position to succeed. And that leads us to our next guy who went undrafted, another offensive lineman who I absolutely fell in love with watching his tape, Willie Lampkin. Definitely a first-round talent, first-round IQ, and all the things. He's just undersized, right? But this guy is a guard. He could play center. He's versatile, and the fact that the Rams signed him just speaks volumes to me. The fact that two of these late guys who I had going, late right on day 3 on the offensive line position, right, and Weddick and Lampkin, the fact that the Rams signed both of these guys makes me happy, because it kind of gives me, it's like, damn, okay, you're right about these guys. There is something in there that possibly could be, they could possibly be, solid NFL players. And the fact that one of the organizations I respect the most, led by Les Snead and Sean McVay, signed both of these guys, I think speaks volumes, and it just makes me happy. And I'm super excited for both of these guys overall, man. The fact that they're going into such a amazing organization like the LA Rams, and overall the Lampkin signing is a A+, definitely A+ fit, and same for Weddick. And then we move on to our final guy, the Miami legend, wide receiver Xavier Restrepo, somehow falls out of the draft and gets signed as an undrafted free agent to stay with his quarterback one, Cam Ward. So the elite Miami duo from this past season in college football will stay together and will be bringing their greatness to Nashville, one of my favorite cities in the world. Cannot wait for the Titans, the Titans fans to experience the greatness that this combination provides, and Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo. But yeah, guys, with all that said, it's going to wrap up this draft recap episode. Obviously, this is the 3rd straight week that we do draft content. All my entertainment people, I know I haven't talked about entertainment. I just really wanted to put my full focus on here on the NFL draft. Now with it being over, now, going forward, we are going to be providing entertainment coverage. Super excited. Next Monday is the Met Gala. I've been covering that the last couple of years, and can't wait to talk about it on the podcast next week. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, guys, with all that said, if you have any opinions you want to share about any of these prospects that I covered on today's show, make sure to let us know on Instagram and TikTok. Reach out to us there. If there's any other, draft pick or any draft trade that happened that you want us to cover in a future episode, let us know as well. Make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_ES. Fins up. Until next time, everyone, take care.